In the last story, we witnessed the incredible journey of Joseph and his family. Joseph rose from being sold into slavery by his own brothers to becoming the second most powerful man in Egypt. He forgave his brothers and brought his father, Jacob, and the entire family to live in Egypt, where they thrived under Pharaoh's care. Genesis concluded with Jacob's blessings for his sons, his passing, and the eventual death of Joseph. Now, as we begin the book of Exodus, centuries have passed, and Joseph's story becomes the foundation for what unfolds next. Let's dive into the story of how God raises a deliverer to free his people. After the time of Joseph and his brothers, the descendants of Jacob, known as the Israelites, settled in Egypt. Each of Jacob's sons brought their families with them. In total, 70 members of Jacob's household came to Egypt, not counting Joseph, who was already there. As years passed, Joseph, his brothers, and their entire generation eventually died. But the Israelites continued to grow and prosper. They became numerous, strong, and filled the land. Their growth worried the Egyptians, especially the new Pharaoh, who did not remember Joseph or his contributions to Egypt. This new Pharaoh saw the Israelites as a potential threat. He said to his people, "Look, the Israelites are becoming too many and too powerful. If a war breaks out, they might join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the land." To suppress them, Pharaoh put harsh taskmasters over the Israelites. They were forced into hard labor, building cities like Pithom and Ramses for Pharaoh. Despite their suffering, the Israelites continued to multiply and grow stronger. This only increased the Egyptians' fear and resentment. Pharaoh's response was to make their lives even harder. The Israelites were forced to work tirelessly in fields, making bricks and mortar, and their lives became bitter and unbearable. Pharaoh, determined to control the Israelite population, devised a cruel plan. He summoned 2 Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, and gave them a horrifying command. "When you help the Hebrew women give birth, if it's a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, let her live." However, Shiphrah and Puah feared God and refused to follow Pharaoh's orders. Instead, they allowed the baby boys to live. When Pharaoh summoned them and asked why they had disobeyed, the midwives replied, "The Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are strong and give birth quickly, even before we arrive to help." God was pleased with the courage of Shiphrah and Puah, and he blessed them for their faithfulness. The Israelite population continued to grow even stronger, and God gave the midwives families of their own as a reward. Frustrated that his plan wasn't working, Pharaoh issued an even more horrifying decree. He commanded all his people, "Every Hebrew baby boy must be thrown into the Nile River, but the girls can live." Thus began a dark and difficult time for the Israelites, but even in the midst of oppression, God was preparing a way to deliver his people from their suffering. During the dark days of oppression in Egypt, when Pharaoh had commanded that every Hebrew baby boy be thrown into the Nile, a man from the tribe of Levi married a woman from the same tribe. They had a son, and when the mother saw how beautiful and precious he was, she decided to hide him to protect his life. For 3 months, she kept him hidden, but as he grew, it became impossible to conceal him any longer. In an act of desperation and hope, the mother crafted a small basket out of bulrushes, coating it with tar and pitch to make it waterproof. She placed her baby in the basket and gently set it among the reeds along the riverbank. The baby's older sister stood nearby, watching carefully to see what would happen to her little brother. As fate would have it, Pharaoh's daughter came down to the river to bathe. While she was at the river, her attendants noticed the basket among the reeds. At her command, they retrieved it. When Pharaoh's daughter opened the basket, she saw the crying baby and was filled with compassion. She immediately recognized that this was a Hebrew child. The baby's sister, who had been watching from a distance, courageously approached Pharaoh's daughter and asked, "Shall I go and find a Hebrew woman to nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter agreed, and the sister quickly brought their own mother to care for the baby. Pharaoh's daughter said to the mother, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." The mother joyfully cared for her son under Pharaoh's protection. When the child was older, he was brought to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." Years passed, and Moses grew up as part of Pharaoh's household. But even though he lived in luxury, he never forgot his Hebrew roots. One day, Moses went out to see the suffering of his fellow Israelites. He witnessed an Egyptian taskmaster brutally beating a Hebrew slave. Overcome with anger, Moses looked around to ensure no one was watching, then struck and killed the Egyptian. He buried the body in the sand, thinking no one had seen him. The next day, Moses saw two Hebrew men fighting. He tried to intervene, asking the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man replied angrily, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you going to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Fear gripped Moses. He realized his actions were known. When Pharaoh heard about the incident, he sought to kill Moses. To save his life, Moses fled Egypt and escaped to the land of Midian. In Midian, Moses rested by a well. While sitting there, he saw 7 sisters. They are the daughters of the priest of Midian named Ruel. They came to draw water for their father's flock. But some shepherds arrived and drove the sisters away. Moses stood up, defended the women, and helped them water their flock. When the sisters returned home earlier than usual, their father Ruel asked, "Why are you back so soon today?" They explained, "An Egyptian man rescued us from the shepherds. He even helped us water the flock." Ruel said, "Where is he? Why did you leave him? Invite him to come and eat with us." Moses accepted the invitation and decided to stay in Midian. Over time, he married one of Ruel's daughters, Zipporah. They had a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a stranger in a strange land." Back in Egypt, the king who had oppressed the Israelites died. But their suffering continued, and the Israelites groaned under the weight of their bondage. They cried out to God, and their cries reached heaven. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looked upon the Israelites with compassion and resolved to act on their behalf. Thus, the stage was set for the extraordinary journey of Moses and the deliverance of God's people. Moses was living in Midian, tending the flock of his father-in-law. One day, while leading the sheep to the far side of the desert, he came to Mount Horeb, also known as the Mountain of God. As Moses was there, something extraordinary happened. He saw a bush that was on fire, but it wasn't burning up. Curious, he said to himself, "I must go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up." When the Lord saw that Moses approached to investigate, he called to him from the bush, "Moses, Moses." Moses replied, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord continued, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries because of their harsh taskmasters, and I am deeply aware of their pain. I have come down to rescue them from the hands of the Egyptians and bring them to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. It is the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Now the cries of the Israelites have reached me, and I have seen how the Egyptians are oppressing them. So, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses was overwhelmed and asked, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" God reassured him, "I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this very mountain." Still unsure, Moses asked, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' What should I tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am. Tell them, 'I am the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name by which I am to be remembered for all generations. Now, go and gather the elders of Israel. Tell them, the Lord told, I promised to bring you up out of your suffering in Egypt to a land flowing with milk and honey. They will listen to you. Then you and the elders must go to the king of Egypt and say, 'The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So, I will stretch out my hand and perform wonders in Egypt. After that, he will let you go. And I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed toward you. When you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman will ask her neighbor and any guest in her house for silver, gold, and clothing. You will put these on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians." This incredible moment marked the beginning of Moses' journey as the chosen deliverer of Israel, tasked with freeing his people from bondage and leading them toward God's promise. After God had revealed his plan to Moses at the burning bush, Moses was still hesitant. He said to God, "But what if the people don't believe me or listen to me? They might say, 'The Lord didn't appear to you.'" God responded by asking, "What is that in your hand?" Moses replied, "A staff." "Throw it on the ground," God instructed. When Moses threw the staff down, it turned into a snake, and he jumped back in fear. Then God said, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." Moses obeyed, and as soon as he grabbed the snake, it turned back into a staff in his hand. God said, "This is so that they may believe that the Lord has appeared to you." God gave Moses another sign. He told Moses to put his hand inside his cloak. When Moses pulled his hand out, it was leprous, white as snow. God then told him to put his hand back into his cloak, and when he removed it again, it was completely restored. If they don't believe these two signs, God continued, "Take some water from the Nile, pour it on the ground, and it will turn to blood." Still unsure, Moses said, "Lord, I am not a good speaker. I never have been. I am slow of speech and tongue." God replied, "Who made man's mouth? Who makes him mute, deaf, seeing, or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak and teach you what to say." But Moses pleaded, "Lord, please send someone else." This made the Lord angry, but he said, "What about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You will speak to him, and I will help both of you speak and teach you what to do. Aaron will speak to the people for you, and you will guide him with my words. Take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs I've shown you." Moses returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said, "Please let me return to my people in Egypt to see if they are still alive." Jethro replied, "Go in peace." The Lord then spoke to Moses in Midian, saying, "Go back to Egypt." Moses took his wife and sons, placed them on a donkey, and started his journey back to Egypt, carrying the staff of God in his hand. The Lord instructed Moses, "When you return to Egypt, perform all the wonders I have shown you before Pharaoh. But I will harden his heart so he will not let the people go. Tell Pharaoh, this is what the Lord says, Israel is my firstborn son. Let my son go, so he may worship me. If you refuse, I will kill your firstborn son. On the way, at a lodging place, the Lord confronted Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah, Moses' wife, took a sharp stone and circumcised their son. She touched Moses' feet with the foreskin and said, "You are a bridegroom of blood to me." After this, the Lord let Moses go. Meanwhile, the Lord told Aaron, "Go into the wilderness to meet Moses." Aaron obeyed and met Moses at the mountain of God. He greeted Moses with a kiss, and Moses told him everything the Lord had said and showed him the signs he was to perform. Together, Moses and Aaron returned to Egypt and gathered the elders of the Israelites. Aaron spoke to them, sharing all the words the Lord had given Moses, and performed the signs before the people. The Israelites believed, and when they heard that the Lord had seen their suffering and was going to rescue them, they bowed down and worshipped God. This marked the beginning of God's deliverance of his people through Moses. After gathering courage from God's instructions, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. They said to him, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, let my people go, so they may hold a feast for me in the wilderness." Pharaoh, unimpressed, scoffed and asked, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Moses and Aaron tried again, explaining, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please allow us to take a 3-day journey into the desert to sacrifice to our God. If we do not obey him, he may bring plagues or punishment upon us." Pharaoh dismissed their plea, saying, "Why are you distracting the people from their work? Get back to your labor." He then remarked, "Look, the people of the land are already so many, and you are stopping them from their tasks." That same day, Pharaoh issued an order to his taskmasters and overseers. He commanded, "Do not supply the Israelites with straw to make bricks as you have done before. Let them gather their own straw. But do not reduce their workload. They must produce the same number of bricks as before. These people are lazy, and that is why they are crying out, 'Let us go and sacrifice to our God.' Increase their workload so they are too busy to listen to such nonsense." The taskmasters obeyed Pharaoh's harsh command. They told the Israelites, "Pharaoh says, I will no longer give you straw. You must gather your own straw wherever you can find it, but your daily quota of bricks remains the same." The Israelites scattered across Egypt, desperately searching for stubble to use as straw. Yet the taskmasters continued to pressure them, shouting, "Fulfill your quotas just as you did when straw was provided." When the Israelites couldn't meet their daily quotas, the overseers Pharaoh had placed over them were beaten. The overseers went to Pharaoh and cried out, "Why are you treating your servants this way? No straw is given to us, yet we are told to make bricks. Your servants are being beaten, but the fault lies with your own people." Pharaoh, however, showed no sympathy. "You are lazy, that's what you are. That's why you're saying, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Now get back to work. No straw will be given to you, yet you must produce the same amount of bricks." The Israelite overseers realized they were in a dire situation. They knew Pharaoh would not reduce their workload and saw no way to meet his demands. On their way out of Pharaoh's palace, the Israelite overseers met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them. Frustrated and angry, they said, "May the Lord judge you for what you've done. You have made us a stench in Pharaoh's eyes and given him a reason to kill us." Distraught by the worsening situation, Moses turned to God and said, "Lord, why have you brought trouble upon your people? Why did you send me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought nothing but harm to these people. And you have not rescued your people at all." Moses' heartfelt plea ended in confusion and sorrow, but it also set the stage for God's mighty intervention, which was yet to come. After hearing Moses' heartfelt cry about the suffering of the Israelites, the Lord spoke to him with a powerful promise: "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. With a strong hand, he will let the Israelites go, and with a strong hand, he will drive them out of his land." God then reminded Moses of who he is. "I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, but I did not reveal my name Jehovah to them. I established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, where they lived as strangers. I have heard the groaning of the Israelites, who are enslaved by the Egyptians, and I have remembered my covenant." God continued with his instructions to Moses: "Tell the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the heavy burdens of the Egyptians. I will free you from slavery and redeem you with my mighty power and great judgments. You will be my people, and I will be your God. You will know that I am the Lord who rescues you from your suffering. I will bring you into the land I promised to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as your inheritance." Moses delivered this message to the Israelites, but they were so overwhelmed with despair and the harshness of their slavery that they couldn't bring themselves to listen. Their spirits were broken by their suffering. The Lord spoke again to Moses, saying, "Go to Pharaoh and tell him to let the Israelites leave Egypt." But Moses doubted himself, saying, "If the Israelites didn't listen to me, why would Pharaoh? I'm not a good speaker." Despite Moses' hesitation, God gave him and Aaron a clear command: they were to speak to Pharaoh and lead the Israelites out of Egypt. The text provides a detailed record of the family lineage of Moses and Aaron, showing their connection to the tribes of Israel. They were from the tribe of Levi, the third son of Jacob. Levi's sons were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, and through this line came Moses and Aaron. Amram, Moses' father, married Jochebed, who bore Aaron and Moses. Aaron married Elisheba, and together they had 4 sons. This family lineage reinforced that Moses and Aaron were chosen leaders from a sacred line. Once again, the Lord spoke to Moses in Egypt, saying, "I am the Lord. Speak everything I command to Pharaoh." Still unsure of himself, Moses said, "I am not a skilled speaker. How will Pharaoh listen to me?" Yet God, with patience and reassurance, continued to guide Moses and Aaron, setting the stage for his great plan to free his people from slavery. The journey of deliverance was about to begin. What an incredible beginning to the story of God's mighty deliverance. The faithfulness of God shines through even in the darkest times. The story of Exodus 1-6 teaches us about God's faithfulness, his compassion, and his power to deliver. It reminds us that God hears the cries of his people and remembers his promises, responding in his perfect timing. Despite Moses' insecurities and feelings of inadequacy, God chose him to lead the Israelites, showing that God doesn't call the qualified but equips those he calls. The bravery of the Hebrew midwives and Moses' eventual obedience demonstrate the importance of faith and courage in following God's will, even in the face of great challenges. This story reassures us that God is sovereign over all, and no earthly power can hinder his plans. It also highlights how God prepares his people for the mission ahead, equipping them with the tools and strength they need to fulfill his purpose. Ultimately, it inspires us to trust in God's deliverance, lean on his strength, and walk in obedience, knowing he is faithful to his promises. Don't miss the next chapter of this amazing journey, where we'll see God's power displayed through the plagues of Egypt and the institution of the first Passover. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring biblical narratives. See you next time.